everyone, it's me, the Colorful Booknester, Rebecca, and I thought I would just pop on and start showing you something that I'm doing in a work in progress. This is a picture that I have chosen to do in what I feel are autumnal colors, and I've been working on it for a little while, but I brought it back out because here it is. We just passed the autumn beginning in North America, and the colors outside are just gorgeous and inspiring, so I wanted to bring those inside. I got a tetanus shot yesterday, so my arm is really sore, so the thought of going out and digging and moving mulch and everything else is just not appealing, which is really unusual because digging in the dirt is my specialty, one of them anyway. So here, let me show you a couple pictures of what's going on outside and why it's really surprising I don't want to be out there. I mean, I want to be out there, but I don't want to be digging, so I'm going to be in here coloring. All right, so here we are. As I said, this particular picture, I'm really feeling the more subdued autumnal colors. I'm liking the color combinations that I'm getting. So I'm pretty well set, as you can tell. Some things are, the most completed area is probably this guy's head, except for his eye, but I'll leave that for the very last. And some of these flowers down here are feeling pretty finished, but there's always tweaking that can be done. The nest has been a labor of love and will continue to be. I need to put a lot more depth and shadows and all that, but the background is going to be very simple. I've already started kind of filling in with a blue-gray, and I think I'm going to keep it just that really simple blue-gray. I really want this foreground to show, so I'm not going to have bright colors in the background or anything like that. So I just want the actual picture. So the book that we're in is Zemlja Snova. I have colored in this book before whenever I was showing you my grapes. I have been coloring in this book quite a lot, enjoying it. Out of all the books I own, it's funny, every time I get into this one, I really just enjoy the process. And the really interesting part is because I do nothing but color in Crayolas. So Crayola pencils, and then I put my Tombows over top now. They build up just as nice as the other ones that I've shown you recently. Using my Tombows is kind of almost like I can really make them into blenders by having this kind of wax or oil based. In this case with the Crayolas, I'm sure it's pretty wax based, but one of the reasons why I say with Crayolas I know works much better, not only have I used them in this book, but then I did accidentally, I went to color this area last night, the harness that was the last thing I needed to do on this page. I said, you know what, get this done. And so I started doing the harness, and I was wondering, why did it feel so differently? Why wasn't this working? And what I realized is I was using Prismacolors. So I did finish that little bit with Prismacolors unintentionally. So, but the Crayolas work so beautifully in this book, I can't imagine using anything else. So it is an amazingly beautiful book. I have another work in progress back here with the ship that I'm just going slowly, again using nothing but Crayola Colored Pencils and my Tombows and my Staedtler Triplets file liners for now, but as those wear out and run out, they're being replaced by Stabilos. So, but let's go ahead and go to the page that I wanted to work on today. So again, I'm going to probably start focusing. I want to do the eggs and show you how I'm doing those. And then I'm probably going to focus on my birds for a little while because I have 4 little birds to do around here. And then the flowers, and then of course the bark in the nest. I don't know what all I'm going to do today, but I just figured that I'd pop on and show you just a few little things I'm doing and tout these amazing Crayola pencils. So this one, I do have the 100 set, and I encourage anybody to go. They have them at Walmart and other places like that. They're not expensive at all. These, 100 pencils for something like $14.99 to $20, depending on if you find them on sale or not. And I think, and they are amazing, particularly in this book. They're really, really shining, so I love it. So the first one I'm going to start off with is our dark brown. And all I do, first and foremost, is very lightly, and that is the thing with the Crayolas. Do be prepared that it's not about pushing them down. They don't drop as much color as the Prismacolors do right off the bat. The grain in this paper feels really smooth, but there is a nice little grain in it, and if you use the circles, I am able to get a pretty smooth transition colors. So right now I'm just putting in some shadows where I think they would be, and just start building it up. And as you can tell, it's incredibly light. In fact, let me bring you down just so that you can see it a little bit better. Hold on. There we go. All right, that's probably a little bit better for you guys to see. But it is very, very light. I mean, you could hold back all the way back to here if you wanted to make sure you do a light. I don't seem to have a problem. I prefer really light work, and I've been doing it for a while, so I mean, I could even be this close up and it's not going to be heavy-handed. But I'm comfortable back here, just so you can see what I'm doing. So just going around and doing a little bit of shadow on the curved edges of the little egg. Now the one thing is, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but these eggs do have pretty dark lines around them. I mean, that's a pretty strong, even with the shading, you still see that black line. So I don't know if I'm going to come in with my Posca at the end and then kind of, the thing with Posca is if you let it dry, you can then go back over with your pencils or your markers, and they kind of, it'll take that white down a little bit, but it does help erase some of the lines. But we'll see. I mean, this is so far from being finished that I have plenty of time to kind of judge it. So again, just kind of going around the edges ever so lightly with what is probably my darkest brown color on these eggs. Just to kind of give that little bit of an ode of shadow. And I'm going to go over here. Now, of course, we know this is all going to be in shadow because it's inside and shaded by your nest material. So it's funny because I like things that I can just kind of get into a rhythm, and so I like backgrounds and I like big expanses of certain colors or whatever, as long as it's a process. The really tiny details kind of bother me. So when you look at this nest, really and truly, don't look at it as 1,000 tiny little details. If you do layers like this, especially with with these Crayolas, you can go around and put it around the whole thing, and you're not going to switch a pencil for a while. And sometimes that's what I need. I mean, that's the meditative part or the calming part. The exciting part is when those colors pop and come alive. But this whole going around and kind of putting in on a larger scale, different shading, and so I would go with one colored pencil and do all of them. But I really try to look at each branch and think of it individually, but it still has a basis of the same color. I'm thinking they've picked these little pieces of twine and stuff from a nearby source, which is very similar in color. And they should be, by now, they should be drying up. Now, it probably is not appropriate that I'm doing this in autumnal colors. Because if we think about it, little baby birds and stuff are early summer, beginning in spring, but definitely early summer. And by autumn, they need to get their little bottoms on the move to figure out where they're going for the winter. Or if they're staying, they need to be stocking up for food, not building nests and having eggs. But we are in a fairy tale land, and if I want beautiful things to be able to be born at that time, that's what's going to happen. So we're using, it reminded me of old wallpapers, and I just went blank on the name of the one I'm thinking of, but there are some very old wallpaper tapestry type papers that, to me, this particular page reminds me of. And as I was coloring it, that's really where the colors came from. So I could see these colors used in a very elegant drawing room of some sort. So, okay. And I'm going to go as I always do, which is back into my colors, into the color I've already established, because I want this all to be an underlay, and then we're going to come out with it. And we continue to build up, and now I'm going in with Almond, and I'm going to put it over everything. But first I'm going to, go ahead and sharpen it. And I need to see if I had a couple of these, but this one, the sharpeners, the comb sharpeners, and I love them, especially for, just being able to sit anywhere and use them. So the little comb sharpeners. But I think it's getting dull because I've had it for quite a while. And you can either get the replacement blades, or you just the overall replacement for the actual piece itself. And they're not very expensive. I get them off of Amazon, and they're pretty inexpensive. I usually buy 3 at a time. I haven't tried just buying the blades yet, but I'm thinking that I'm going to want to. Now this is going to be really boring watching me do this, largely because you won't be able to see the color change. This is really a buildup of color that I have to do. So I apologize, but part of the layering process is the way that I found that my Crayola colored pencils really work best. They will start kind of blending into one another, and believe it or not, there is color going down. It's just going to be really hard for you to see. So now I'm coming in with my dark chocolate, again, just kind of knowing that this is going to be some of the darker shadows. Start building those up. So next I'm going to kind of use a Wild Blue Yonder pencil. That's what's called Wild Blue Yonder. And you may notice there's some like little blue hints here and there in the egg. And that was kind of intentional. Again, bring all the colors in the egg that we see over in the little birds and the big bird himself. So just going to very lightly start, and this is how I do so much of my clouds, my water, whatever, and it's just kind of these random little circles that I kind of blend out, and it makes for very irregular shapes on the egg, well in this case on the egg, but if you're doing clouds or any of the other thing, that irregular makes it look more natural. And so I'm just going to do it ever so slightly and just start beginning it. And then I'm also going to use it in the shadowing area a little bit, so there's a little bit of a cool tone in there. And to bring it out a little bit, it kind of lifts it. I'm going to go ahead and come in with your blue bolt, and I'm just going to kind of go in the middle of some of those areas, and you'll see that blue a little bit more. And the areas I'm going into already have kind of the bluish gray around them, but you have to be very careful with this one because it does lay down a lot of color, and this is a hard color to then subdue out, and that's why I'm doing it as early as I am, why I'm introducing it so early into the coloring process on these eggs, so that I can keep layering, and hopefully I want the blue to come through, but I don't want it to be just screaming that, you know, there's a blue blob on the eggs. And I don't really use this one too much down into these colors, except for if it's attached. So meaning going down in those darker colors, unless it's attached already to a little splotch of blue. So see how I'm then going and extending that blue down into that just a hair. And it is because the layering and making it not be so pronounced, but more of a gentle blue is what's important to me for right now. And as I always say, you can add, but gee, it's very hard to take away. Even with a really nice eraser like what I have with my Derwent electric eraser. I keep saying that word very weird. All right, I'm going to go back in with my Wild Blue Yonder and just kind of hopefully soften these out or start that process a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is be repeating basically all the colors that I've already told you about. So I will put those up on the screen, but this is where just going back and keep building and building, because eventually I want to get to this color from here to there. So that's a lot of building to do. And because the Crayola pencils don't respond well to being pushed and mashed down, I have to do this very, very gently, and like I said, with lots and lots of layers. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with this light brown before I go over everything. So this is just light brown before I start going in and really doing that repeat. And what this light brown does is kind of start really introducing more of that more of a brown color versus the white that's peeking through so much, or even the cream that we've now kind of changed it to. So we want the cream to be kind of more left for your highlights. So I'm just going to start playing around, and again, this is with the light brown. And I do change the directions of my ovals. Again, that's something to kind of notice, and what it does is you get that cross hatching, so it starts filling in a little bit better with the colors and makes a smoother look, so that all the colors not being applied in one direction. So I have a new color that I'm bringing in, which is Beaver, and the idea with Beaver is to really start putting in those heavy shadows like what you're seeing over on this side. We're going to start doing that, and then this also needs to start having a little bit more of a yellow tone. So these are a little bit warmer, these are cooler, and I'll show you once I get the Beaver in how I'm going to start building up more of the warm tone. And as you can see, I'm going over those little blue spots so that there's just a hint of blue that we see. Not giant speckle, just kind of like there's almost like the eggs are kind of, almost like stones. In fact, I'm looking at this going, wow, this would be a good color combinations you could use with stones as well. Though I think there's a couple of YouTubers that have done some amazing work showing us how to do stones. In fact, there's one or two that I think I have in my history or in my to be watched list that I want to go back and kind of follow and see how they're doing it. Yeah, I'm trying to go in with a little bit more heavier shadows. And then I'm also toying with the idea of the bird casting a shadow across the eggs. So that might be something that I experiment with. The problem is a lot of times what I want to do is find a really small little place to try it and see if I like the look. And there's really not a place I can try creating a shadow on these eggs without it being, you know, like in this case, like right in the middle here. So it might be something that after I color the bird, I'll decide if I want to. If I can make the bird appear to be standing a little bit, I mean, there's a little shadow underneath him, but again, we don't have a really bright sky, and if this was wallpaper, it wouldn't necessarily have a shadow, but I'm toying with the idea, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So you can see we're starting to get a little bit closer to those other tones. And now what I want to do is introduce that kind of a yellow, and I'm actually using a color that I've used throughout. I used it to make the wood in the nest look a little bit more like it has a little yellow tone, and it is just your, what is that, harvest gold is what I'm going to use. Which sounds appropriate for, since this is supposed to be an autumn page, so which the fall and autumn's all about harvesting. All right, so I'm just going to go in over everything on these two eggs, and then probably, so if you look up here, there's a really good, oh, if I let you see it, a good shadow already of the harvest gold coming out where you really see that. But I'm just going to go over both of these eggs and try to warm them up just a little bit. Okay, so I'm feeling like they're getting really close. I mean, the shadows I need to do a little bit heavier, and I think that I would actually, I'm going to go in and do that possibly with the Tombows, but I want to make sure that I've got plenty of layers so the Tombow moves around really easily. So I'm going to go back in with my Almond and my light brown. And kind of, actually I'm going to do the light brown coming out a little bit and just keep adding. And I'm going to turn the book so that I'm more at a different angle, colorful, comfortable angle that I'm covering, changing the direction of my ovals again. So, you know, moving your book around is always a good idea when you're building up big pieces like this. So, I mean, the eggs aren't huge, but they are a multi-layered part of them. Oop, I don't know what that was. but by moving them, I'm changing the direction of those ovals. And then the almond, just over everything. And again, just to make sure I've got a good layer down before I go introduce any type of markers or anything like that. And you can use them, you know, kind of as a blender at this point too. So I like using other pencils as my blender versus just a regular plain no color blender. I tried a couple of those blenders and they just really don't work in my hand. So all right, so now comes the time where I kind of like want to introduce some Tombows, but I'm gonna start way down here and just make sure, yeah, that this is an okay color, that it's not too dark. Again, when I don't write down what I'm doing every step of the, you know, as I'm finishing an element, it gets a little frustrating because when I go back to do a second version of that same element, if I don't have that all written down, it's really tough for me to remember and what colors do what. And Tombows are pretty good as far as the cap color being close to what you're doing, but everything behaves a little bit different. So the first one that I added was 992, and then the second one is 020. And the 020, that's kind of the idea. It has like this cream colored lid, looks orange on the tip, and it has kind of a orangey gold portion about it. So when it comes out, so I have to be a little bit careful with it. I'm going to put a couple layers of that shadow down here. And then always remember about Tombows that they do come out much darker and then usually dry to a lighter color. So I'm just kind of using it as my shadows around the edges. And because of that wax, the Tombows haven't quite dried, so going in with this one I can feather out some of those harsher shadows. All right, so I'm going to let those dry for just a little bit, and then I'm going to go in with my nope. Again, dangers of having both lids off at the same time as you put them on the wrong thing. So I'm going to golden these up a little bit more. I don't think I used this too much on them. This 020, so we're going to warm up this egg that I've already done some coloring on to make them match a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, that's looking more like those over there. There we go. Those look pretty good together. So like I said, one of the things I don't like about the eggs is that I can really still see the black lines that separate them. It doesn't look as naturalistic. And so now is going to be the question, and I'm not going to do it right now. Like I said, I want to go ahead and start working on this bird and start really intensifying him and this other little guy down here and get the nest done, and then I'll decide if I want to come in and do something more, whether it's with a Posca pen of some sort to kind of hide those separation lines a little bit so that they aren't so in your face, making these look a little bit more naturalistic, or if I'm just going to leave it alone because I don't want to make a mistake. I don't know that a white highlights what I need there, but if I can do the white highlight and then maybe come over with the 020 of Tombow or something and dull it down, that might be exactly what we need. But I need to see how vibrant I can get my birds. So let's go ahead and start on the birds next.
So basically, I made a change and I realized how long this had already taken, and I decided to cut these into two parts. So what we're going to stop here is just looking at the eggs. And as you can tell, I do make the decision to go back in with my Posca and kind of lighten the edges of the eggs a little bit so that you didn't have that dark line, that coloring in line. So now the next video that you'll see, which is the part 2, will show you the coloring of the bird that's sitting on the eggs, and then the enhancement, the deepening of the nest using my Tombow and Stabilo markers and some triplets as well, just to show you the difference of how much richer I went ahead and went. But as always, I really believe that what I do underneath that, the base I put, which in this case is the Crayola Colored Pencils, is the real key to them being able to go over with the markers and get these deeper colors. But at the same time, if that base of shading and all that wasn't there, I really don't feel I could have done this with just the Tombows. I don't have that kind of talent. And the Tombows would have been absorbed into the coloring book page, the paper itself. And remember, those colored pencils are creating a wax base for those markers to then be able to move around and blend. So that will be in a separate video that is coming up. Again, it's just going to be part 2, and that's going to be my coloring the little bird and then going in and really, really deepening the nest. I hope you've enjoyed this, and as I've always say, keep coloring those pages, and until next time, have a great night or evening or morning or day or lunch.